Maybe it's not a better morning routine or more self care or new supplement or decluttering your home that's going to make you feel calm again. Maybe it's just a couple micro habits, tiny shifts that can regulate your nervous system and change the entire atmosphere of your home. If your days feel like one ongoing emergency, if the noise, the mess, the constant needs leave you running on fumes, I want to share some simple micro habits that helped me come up for air. If you're new here, I'm Kiri, and I help Christian homemakers who are walking in a fog of exhaustion and stress to become the patient, peaceful mother and wife they've always dreamt of being. And if you're a Christian mother who's burnt out and longing for joy without therapy or supplements or endless decluttering, I would love for you to subscribe. You don't have to stay stuck in survival mode. And if you're wondering how I went from just barely surviving each day to creating a peaceful, joyful home, even with 3 little ones underfoot, I walk through that exact process that I followed in my free workshop, from survival mode to peace-filled homemaking in 7 days. So you can click the link below to watch that. Okay, now let's dive into the micro habits. Habit number 1 is smiling. Playfulness might be the fastest way out of fight or flight and into connection with your family. So I was recently in an argument with my husband, and yes, I have his permission to share this. And I'll be honest with you, I'm stubborn, not in like a cute, quirky way, not that it ever is, but in like a foolish, this is a character flaw that I have to wrestle with before the Lord kind of way. And in this particular moment, I had dug in. I wasn't responding in the spirit at all. I was operating fully in the flesh, and I was determined to win this argument. So we were going back and forth, probably about something ridiculous. And in the middle of it, I broke character for just a second, and I gave this tiny smirk. Not on purpose, but it just slipped out. And instantly, my husband smirked too. And I was shocked. What was happening? It was like a crack in the wall. The tension broke, and we both just started laughing. He came over, grabbed my face, kissed me, and said, "Why are you like this?" And just like that, it was over. The argument was squashed, and we moved on. It reminded me of something that I've said before a lot on this channel. If you can just be a little playful, even when you're upset, it has the power to soften the atmosphere in your home almost instantly. It's disarming. It reminds everyone we're on the same team. There's this biblical rhythm to marriage. Wives want to be more respectful when they feel cherished by their husbands, and husbands feel more loving when they feel respected. But the truth is, someone has to go first. And when we withhold love or respect because we think the other person doesn't deserve it, it's our own fruit that we forfeit. A gentle smile can often be the first act of laying down that pride. All right, the next habit. So anxiety makes your body feel unsafe, but as Christians, we have a better way. So I was in a call with my mentor one day, and I was explaining a situation where I just lost it on my children, and I felt so guilty. And I had explained that I had like 10 things on my mind that I had to do, and I was trying to be present with my children. But then I read this email, and in that email, I can't even remember what it was about, but it was like bad news about something. And she could have told me that I shouldn't have been checking my email in that moment, or how I could have renewed my mind on all the things that I had to do, and she would have been right. But instead, she gave me this super simple and super practical prayer that I now use again and again. She said, "Why don't you just ask the Lord to show you a way out? Whatever the situation is, just say, 'Lord, please show me a way out.'" And just like that, that little micro prayer became my anchor in situations of immense stress, confusion, and survival. And something that plagued me for years, and I used to let steal my mental space, was anger. So that leads me into the next habit. Anger can take up so much mental space, and it can cloud every interaction you have in the midst. When you're mad about something, something often happens when you immediately react. The anger will actually compound, and it'll put your body into a state of fight or flight. However, God tells us exactly what to do when we're angry. In Psalm 4:4, he says, "Be angry and do not sin. Ponder in your own hearts on your beds and be silent." So physical retreat quiets the adrenaline, and it can shift you out of survival mode. And I found that being obedient to this verse for even just a minute can give me clarity of mind and help me move forward with so much more peace. So while the Lord tells us to ponder, he doesn't want us to ruminate, which leads me into the next habit. Overthinking doesn't make you more prepared. It just keeps your body trapped in the past. For years, I thought replaying conversations or imagining what I should have said or rehearsing future confrontations was just part of being thoughtful or processing things. But I didn't realize that what I was actually doing was training my nervous system to stay in a state of hypervigilance. This is what rumination does to the brain. It locks you into the limbic system, your brain's emotional survival center. So when you repeatedly think about something hurtful or unresolved, especially with strong emotion attached to it, you're reinforcing that neural loop. Your brain can't tell the difference between something that happened once and something that you're reliving 100 times. So every time you replay that moment, your body responds as if it's happening again. Your heart rate increases, your breath shortens, cortisol rises, muscles tighten, and you begin to live not in the present, but in a cycle of imaginary arguments, what ifs, and internal striving for control. That's survival mode. That's what it feels like to be stuck in a loop of mental, emotional stress, even when the actual threat is gone. And here's the worst part. Rumination doesn't just stir up anxiety. It hardens your heart. It keeps you rehearsing bitterness. It makes you less present to the people who actually need your attention, like your children. And it turns molehills into mountains. It subtly steals your joy, one destructive loop at a time. What changed everything for me was learning detachment, not in a cold, disconnected way, but in a surrendered, handing it to God kind of way. Now, when my thoughts start spiraling like this, I stop and I say, Lord, I give this to you. You know how this made me feel, but it's not mine to carry. You are just, you are kind, you see the full picture. Please soften my heart, soften their heart, and help me to walk in peace. I call this sort of rumination that I was talking about and the destructive behavior that likely results from it, old destructive patterns, ODPs, in my course. I teach my students the exact method for how to escape ODPs using a step-by-step formula. Because ultimately, the peace you want in your home starts with the peace you allow in your thoughts. I talk about this in my free workshop, From Survival Mode to Peace-Filled Homemaking in 7 days, and I walk you through the exact process I followed to stop spiraling into those old destructive patterns and how I began creating a home atmosphere marked by calm, joy, and connection instead. So if you're ever stuck in your own mind, overwhelmed by thoughts that you can't seem to shake, this is for you. You don't have to stay trapped in survival mode. So the link for that is in the description below, and I would love for you to join me. Every time you practice detachment instead of rumination, you're not avoiding reality. You're choosing a better one. You're forming a new neural pathway in your brain, signaling safety to your brain and inviting the Holy Spirit to reign where bitterness once did. Okay. So now let's address the phone issue because it's a big one when it comes to survival mode. It's an issue that for most mothers, and myself included, I really think so much of our overwhelm as mothers can be corrected if we just put our phones in their rightful place. Just like when I was checking my email when I should have been being present with my children, like I talked about before, or even tackling the list that I was worried about, your phone can be a huge stumbling block. So the next habit is I turn my phone into a dumb phone. Okay, seriously, your phone is probably keeping you more in a state of survival mode than you think. So I did this a few months ago. I actually tried a true dumb phone and I loved it for a lot of reasons, but now I just keep my iPhone and I use the assistive access mode to turn it into a dumb phone. Now, if you don't have an iPhone, I don't know how you could do this with an iPhone, but there's tons of resources and videos on this. But basically, it just makes the phone super clunky to use and extremely boring. Also, you can choose the exact apps and things that you want to keep available to you so you can have complete control over that. So this allowed me to get super honest about what apps were stumbling blocks for me and what apps were actual tools that I could use as a real value add to my life. Personally, I was surprised to find that the apps that were time sucks for me weren't the social media apps. They were things like my email or even like the Walmart and Amazon apps. Because let's say I was making dinner and I see that, let's say we're out of ketchup. And so I would go to the Walmart app to add ketchup to my cart. And then real quick, just out of habit, I would check my email. And then I would see an email that bums me out. Now I'm trying to get dinner on the table. I likely have a fussy baby in the background. The toddlers probably need me for something. And I have this email hanging over my head, all because I just wanted to add ketchup to my grocery order. This can all be avoided if we just live like a 90s mom and have handwritten grocery lists and check our email when the children are in bed, and we protect our peace. That is the beauty of putting your phone in its rightful place. For me, that's using assistive access mode. I know that there's focus modes and all kinds of modes on your phone. So you're no longer carrying the world in your back pocket. That's the point, right? You're turning your phone into a tool, not a temptation. Once I started limiting my phone to just the essentials, my mind actually felt quieter. I had fewer tabs open mentally, and I could focus on the tasks in front of me without 20 invisible pings pulling me in 100 different directions. And that alone helped to pull me out of that constant state of burnout. Your nervous system doesn't just respond to what's happening around you, it responds to what's accessible to you at all times. So when you remove the option to be constantly plugged in, your body begins to rest. All right, and speaking of dinner, let's talk about a few micro habits that brought the most consistency to my chaotic evenings when it came to dinner. So, mothers carry a lot of mental weight, and one decision that adds so much to decision fatigue is meal planning. So, when I was postpartum with my third baby, I was like, okay, how can I make meal planning extremely simple while still having a meal plan? Because I'm not the type to just wing it. That's not the type of gal I am. So, I came up with this method, and I'm sure it's nothing revolutionary, but I don't know. I thought I would share it. I came up with this method that does take a little time to set up, but it makes it super simple to meal plan every week. I call it the pick one meal planning method. I create a list of proteins, a list of veggies, and a list of carbs. And for each meal, I just pick one from each category. And then that's my meal plan. So here are some examples. For proteins, I of course have chicken, beef, fish. And so in each category, I have it broken down to the different types of ways that I can cook those proteins. So for example, for the chicken category, I have blackened chicken, whole roasted chicken, things like that. For beef, I have a roast or meatballs. For veggies, I have green beans, salad, steamed broccoli. For carbs, I have mashed potatoes, sourdough bread, rice. So I'd go through the list and I'd choose, let's say, blackened chicken with sourdough bread and steamed broccoli. That's night one. Night two is a roast with mashed potatoes and a salad. You get the idea. You don't need Instagram-worthy dinners every night, or really for certain seasons of life at all. So I'm personally in a season where our meals are very simple. And sometimes they're so simple that they take 15 minutes or less to pull together. And that's exactly where this next habit comes in. You need to have contingency plans when days go haywire. And they will when you have a bunch of little kids like me. So I built a 15-minute meal list. All my meal ideas that are so easy, I can make them in 15 minutes or less of hands-on time. And then I try to always keep at least some of these ingredients on hand. But one of our favorites lately is to take a bag of frozen diced potatoes, another bag of frozen meatballs, and then another bag of frozen veggies. And I throw them all on a sheet pan and I roast them for 20 minutes. It takes no time, but it's delicious. So I actually sell a 15-minute meal plan with over 50 recipe ideas like this. So the link is below if you're interested in that. But okay, the last meal planning micro habit will probably actually change your life. Set your meals up so that you literally don't even have to meal plan. I create staple meals each week, and it's like a copy and paste meal plan. So I have 3 meals that we always have every single week, which means that I only need to plan for 4 meals. And out of those 4 meals, maybe we eat out for one of the nights, and maybe for another night we have leftovers, and maybe for another night we have an easy button meal. So really, if I wanted to, I could actually not have to meal plan at all and still be good to go for the whole week. So having staple meals is so important. So our first staple meal is a roast with a carb and a veggie. Our second staple meal is a whole roasted chicken with a carb and a veggie. And our third staple meal is soup, using all the leftover scraps from the week with sourdough bread. Or if it's hot out, that staple meal turns into a salad using all the leftover scraps from the week. So find probably 3, maybe 4 staple meals that your family is totally fine eating week after week, but that you can make different. So like a roast with a carb and a veggie, I can actually turn that into like tacos or carnitas or something, right? A whole roast chicken, I can do like a different sauce to make it interesting, or just changing up the carb and the veggie. Soup, I can do like anything to make it interesting. So anyway, systems win over willpower, always. Willpower, it's like a match. It's quick to light and quick to burn out. But a system has longevity. Once you build it right and tend to it consistently, it keeps everything running efficiently. So many mothers are running their homes on the fumes of willpower. They're white knuckling their way through meal planning and clutter and conflict, and they're relying on their own energy and motivation to carry the weight of their home. But that's not sustainable. That's survival mode. So creating a bulletproof system that works regardless of the season you're in is so necessary, especially with young children. Sick kids, husband traveling, doesn't matter because your system has built-in margin. It's rooted, it flexes, and it doesn't break. So that's what I built with our meal planning routines. I don't have to reinvent the wheel every week, and I don't need to make 100 decisions when I'm already depleted. I've created a system that practically runs itself so I can focus on what actually matters. So this shift, replacing the chaos with systems, replacing stress with peace, wasn't just meals. It's a full system that I teach in my free workshop, so you can join using the link below. All right, the next habit is to get rid of what doesn't serve you. Figure out what you own that you think is a blessing or is a value add to your life, but that's actually a facade. For us, that facade was our TV. So we don't own a TV anymore. We did for a while, but it was broken for much of the time that we had it. So it was just kind of a dust collector, and we finally decided to just get rid of it. Personally, when we did give our children screen time, it was only for about 20 minutes twice a week, and I always regretted it afterwards because they would act like they didn't know what to do with themselves. Now, not having the option for screens has been so great because I always find creative, more productive ways to occupy them when I'm doing something that does need my full attention. And all that said, I also think, though, that if you're using a streaming service that you trust, that doesn't show commercials or anything, and that the show is something that you really trust, it can be a good tool so that you can get some things done, you can get your self-care time or whatever you need to do. So I'm not shaming people who give their children screen time by any means. But just keep in mind that clarity often comes from subtraction. Remove what steals mental space in your life or is actually like a fake blessing. So something that I subtracted off and on over the years, thinking that it was keeping me in survival mode, was coffee. But it turns out that it was just a little shift of when I drank that coffee that actually corrected the issue. So this leads to my next habit, which is I stopped drinking coffee first thing in the morning. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not promoting drinking coffee. That's on you. You can decide what you want to do. But for me, I know that a lot of moms, when they are trying to address their burnout, the first thing they turn to is coffee if they're a coffee drinker. And that's what I did too. So I used to wake up and immediately get my coffee going in the morning. Then by around 9 or 10, I was so jittery and had crazy heart palpitations, and I'd feel this ringing in my ears. I'd get hiccups and all these other signs of a nervous system in overdrive. And then I decided to just push my coffee to a few hours after waking up. I still drank it black. I still drank just 1 cup, but I still drank it. And I just moved it a couple hours later, and all those symptoms went away. So yes, coffee can overstimulate an already overworked nervous system, which I think it's really important to address the root of why your nervous system is overworked. And that's actually what I address in my free workshop and my course and all the things. But this simple shift in when you drink your coffee might help you. All right, the next habit is to laugh every day. Watch a Christian comedian like Tim Hawkins or Nate Bargatze, someone clean, lighthearted, and just plain silly. And if those two aren't your style, that's totally fine. The point is to find your laugh again. Maybe it's watching animals doing ridiculous things on YouTube, or maybe it's a baby giggling compilation. Whatever it is, find something that breaks through the heaviness and reminds your brain that you're safe. You're not panicked. And sometimes it's about letting yourself laugh at real life. Like when your toddler does something hilarious. Don't just move past it or offer a tired smile. Actually laugh. Let yourself enjoy the moment. Even if it feels forced at first, you'll be surprised at how quickly it becomes a genuine laugh. And your children, they will eat it up. I'm serious. When they see that you think that they're funny, they're going to lean into that joy and probably actually do something even more hysterical. And I found the same thing in my marriage too. I don't know if your husbands are the same, but my husband truly sees it as his mission in life to make me laugh. And the moment I genuinely laugh at one of his jokes, he doubles down. He turns it into a full on stand up act just to see how far he can take it. And it brings so much lightness to our relationship, especially in seasons that feel really heavy. Laughter doesn't just make life more fun. It often softens your heart. It'll shift the atmosphere of your home. And it just reminds us that joy is meant to be part of the Christian life. So the next habit is I started breathing correctly. So many women don't realize this, but your breath is one of the clearest indicators of whether your nervous system is in a state of stress or safety. So let's break this down. A regulated breath, one that signals to your body that you're safe, should take about 6 to 10 seconds in total. That means around 3 to 5 seconds to inhale and 3 to 5 seconds to exhale. And it should come from your belly, not your chest. When you breathe through your chest, it's shallow, rapid, and it actually sends danger signals to your brain. Your body starts preparing for fight, flight, or freeze, even when there's no real threat. This is why shallow breathing is a hallmark of chronic stress and anxiety. But when you take slow, deep breaths from your diaphragm, letting your belly rise and fall, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system. That's the branch of your nervous system that's responsible for rest, digestion, and healing. And it tells your brain and body you're okay. You can relax. Also, shallow breathing leads to a slumped posture. You're hunched, shoulders forward, chest is tight, but deep, regulated breathing naturally lifts your posture. Your spine aligns, your shoulders will drop, and you'll feel more grounded, present, and in control. I used to actually try to force myself to breathe better. So I'd sit down and I'd do some deep breathing, and it would work for maybe like 5 minutes. But then I would be right back to the chest breathing, holding my breath during stress, and sighing constantly without even realizing it. I couldn't seem to sustain it because my nervous system was still stuck in a state of survival. It wasn't until I actually healed my nervous system that things actually changed. I noticed one day, without even thinking about it, that I was able to breathe deeply again. I could finally take full, deep breaths effortlessly, and it felt like a weight had been lifted off my chest, like air could move freely through my body again. So, if you're ready to breathe deeply again, to feel calm, steady, and grounded, even in the chaos of motherhood, I'd love to walk you through that process in my free workshop. And I'd love to hear, which habit will you be trying this week? Leave a comment so that we can cheer each other on. And if you're curious about how God healed my constant overstimulation and daily anger, click to this next video.